All right, let's get this stream underway. So, welcome. Thanks for joining the stream. My name's Kim, and tonight, so it's nighttime for me. It's 10 at night. I'm going to just write a little Xamarin application. Or really, what I want to have a look at is in the list view in Xamarin.Forms, we want to be able to expose the scroll position, which is something that Xamarin.Forms doesn't do natively with the list view. So I'm just going to create a little effect and see if we can get a little bit of parallax scrolling happening in the list view headers. So like I said, it's quite late for me. It's 10 at night. So let's see how we go. Let me just check. Loose, you're out there. Can you hear my audio okay? Just want to check those levels. I think it's fine. You can. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, let's just jump straight in then. Loud and clear. Amazing. All right. Well, let me load up Visual Studio here as well. I am from Australia. My lovely Aussie accent. I've actually got a bit of a cold, so I'll try not cough in your ear. All right. So let's get started. Okay. Let's start off first of all with creating a new project. Huh? So let's file new project. And we'll create a cross-platform application. We'll call this something amazing like Parallax. There we are. That'll do. And hit the okie dokie button. Create ourselves just a blank .NET Standard application. And as we go through, if there's any questions anyone has, feel free to ask. So don't feel shy. And, if you've got any good ideas for things you want streamed, let me know as well. Just, throw any comments into the chat window. All right, fantastic. We've got ourselves a Xamarin.Forms application. Okay, now, first thing you want to do with the Xamarin.Forms application probably is to make sure, just checking my stream health here, it's looking good. Just make sure that you've got the latest version of Xamarin.Forms installed. So I'm going to go and manage NuGet packages for our solution. And we should find that we have an update for Xamarin.Forms. So up to 3.2, just go and update that first of all. Should just take a moment. And we're good. All right, fantastic. Okay, so what is Parallax? Parallax is where you have sort of two images, or you might have an image that scrolls at a different speed to something else. So if you think back to old 8-bit games where you have the background scrolling and you've got a little character scrolling in front, that's the idea of parallax. What I'm going to do here is just create an effect which will allow us to track the scroll position. And once you've got the scroll position of a list view, then you can do things like parallax on it as well. All right, so what have we got? We've got our solution here. Let's close that down. Let's go ahead, and what we're going to have is going to have a list view. Okay, so let's start off with that. We'll create ourselves a list view inside of here. And I'm just going to keep this simple. I'm not going to do anything particularly fancy with the list view. I'll give it a name. Let's just call it my list view. Why not? All right. And that's it, right? So we've got a list view, and then we want to go and we want to populate this with a little bit of data. So I don't have a data source, so I'm just going to ram some code in it and the code behind. So let's do that. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a list of strings essentially, right? So nothing too exciting. So I'll create myself a list of string objects inside of here, and these will be my list values. So I'll have a property for that. Let's not call that list views. That's a terrible name. Let's call it list items inside of there. All right, and all I'll do is I'll just go and populate the list view. All right, so I'll just go ahead and create myself a for loop here. We'll go and throw 100 items inside of it. So we'll say list items dot add, and then we'll just say item I. There we go, something like that. Now I should make sure that I initialize my list items. So I'll say my list items equals a new list of strings. List of string. There we go. How's that? All right, and then we'll set it as our item source. Okay, so what do we call this thing? We called it my list view, very imaginative. All right, so we'll just say my list view item source equals our list items. Beautiful. All right, so we should now have a list view inside of here. Let's do some builds. Let's see if my environment's going to play with me, or whether it's already gone to sleep. All right, let's go and get our Android, set that as a startup project, give it a build. Android obviously takes a little bit of time. Now, while we're talking about that, or while we're doing that, let's talk about effects first of all. Okay, so I've got a little bit of the Xamarin documentation up here. So I'll post this link into here in case anyone's interested. So first of all, the way that Xamarin.Forms works basically is Xamarin.Forms, you declare elements in Xamarin.Forms like an entry field or a list view, and then you've got a renderer, which takes that Xamarin.Forms model object essentially and turns it into a native control. Okay, so in the, let me go and open this in a new tab here. Okay, so for example, if I was to create an entry field in Xamarin.Forms, there's going to be this renderer that turns that platform independent entry field into an actual platform specific control. So it's going to turn into a UI text view on iOS, and edit text in Android, a text box over on Windows. So that's the whole job of a renderer essentially. And looking around, there's a few solutions out in the community for getting scroll position. So I'll post a couple of these out. This is a pretty good Xamarin.Forums blog in here, and it sort of talks about how do we get these things. And what they've done is they've created renderers for these, and renderers are a pretty good way of doing this actually. But what I kind of want is, because a lot of people subclass the list view and create their own versions of the list view, which is cool, but you don't want to have to put this code in to actually go and trap the native scroll positions every single renderer that you create. So I thought it'd be interesting to try an effect, and the effect would expose the scroll, and so you could go and attach that effect to any of your list views and get that scroll information. Okay, so back to our picture here, because I haven't really explained what an effect is. Talking about a renderer, right? So renderer takes your Xamarin.Forms control, turns it into a native control. What an effect is an effect is basically this other component that you can attach to the rendering process. So once the renderer has created the text box, for example, in UWP, you can go and you can get an effect and attach it to that. Okay, and so basically the effect can be attached, and it can view all the different parts of the rendering process. So it can have a look at the native control, and hence it can hook into events of the native control. Okay, such as the scroll event, so that we could expose that. Right. So that's what we're gonna do essentially today, or tonight, I should say. Okay, let's have a look at. So does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. Let me know if there's any questions. Let's have a look at what this is doing. Oh, great. So we did a build, we didn't do a run. So let's run up our Android version. I should put some music on, shouldn't I? Let's put some music on. All right, come on, Android, do your thing. I should have some hold music for this, really. Hello. DD3D, how you doing? We're just going to create an effect to get some scroll positions out of a list view. Okay, applications debugging. Let's have a look. I'm good. I'm good. It's late at night, so I should be in bed, but but instead I'm coding. Fantastic. Well, make sure if you've got any questions, ask away. What's going on here? Okay, there we go. Cool. So we got a list view. Awesome. We got 100 items in our list view. Beautiful. All right, let's just try it on a few platforms. Let's try it out on iOS. So I'm working here on Windows, but I've got a Mac just sitting over here in the corner, which is doing my Mac build. So I'll go and give this a run. Running iOS 12, which is nice. All right, and there we go. We've got 100 items, 0 to 99. All right, and let's just test our UWPs working as well. Here comes our UWP app. All right, and we've got 100 items in there as well. Beautiful. All right, so we'll get the starting point for what we want. We've got some data we can scroll. So the problem is that if you look at a list view, it doesn't have a scroll, right? So if I say my list view, you'd expect you to have like a scroll event, right, which would tell you where you're up to, but you don't, right? The best that you have is you've got an item appearing and you've got an item disappearing, which tells you essentially that a new item's been made visible on the screen, but it doesn't tell you where you're up to in the scroll event. So what we would like to do is when we have this scrolling, if we can detect where we're scrolling to, we can have a header up here and we can start moving that at a different speed. How's that music? Is it a bit loud? It's a bit loud for me. All right. Okay, cool. So let's add a header into this thing. So let's go back to our main page here. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jam in an image for the list view header. Okay, so what we can do is we can say list view dot header, and then we can put a header onto this thing. So our header for this, probably what we'll do here is we'll stick a grid in here. As Luce knows, this is my favoritist control ever, or favoritist layout. DD3D, you're following me. Awesome. Thank you. Make sure you hit that follow button. All right, so let's have a look. So in our grid, let's make it 200 high. Okay, so we'll start off there with the 200 high, and then we'll throw an image inside of here. Okay, and this image, we're going to give it a source, and we need to give it, we need to have a file for this. So let's grab a file. Now I've got a picture of a cheeky little monkey sitting in my desktop here. Let me just go and find it. No, of course that's not it. What's it called? Okay, here we go. This is our image. Let me go and drag an image in, and I'll show what we have. So if we're going to have images in Xamarin.Forms, we want to put those images into each of the platform projects. And what you should have is you should have them all in the various size drawables. I'm just going to be a bit cheeky here, and I'm just going to drag this image in. So we're going to monkey header. Okay, so it's a little picture of a monkey. Beautiful. All right, now I want to put that into not only my Android project, I want to put that into my iOS project. So in iOS project, that goes under resources. So I'll drag that image under resources. And UWP, you can just dump it in the main project space. Cool. So now that I have monkeyheader.png, let's go and add that in. Okay, and we want this to fill the space, so the 200 high. So I can set an aspect on this. So aspect fill is probably what we're after. Okay, and we should give this a name as well, because we're going to modify this in code. So I'll say xname equals header image. Beautiful, something like that. Now that should probably do us. Let's give it a spin up on iOS. Just check that we have a header. All right, beautiful. We got a header. Great. So we got a header there. Yeah. So the main page.xaml. Let's quickly cover this off, shall we? Okay. So the main page.xaml is in my shared code. So when I create a Xamarin.Forms project, what I have is I've actually got 4 projects here. I've got Parallax is the name of the project. So I've got this project here. This is where my pages get declared. This is my shared code, right? So this is where I declare Xamarin.Forms pages, which get turned into native, okay, native controls and things like that. So then I have an Android and iOS and UWP. So this is kind of like the build host, if you like. It's where we can put any platform specific code, but essentially what it is probably iOS is easiest to look at. When this is just a normal iOS application, when it starts up, you can see it loads up, it initializes Xamarin.Forms, and then it loads up our application. So it actually loads up this class here, which then says, let's go and create the main page, which is where that is. Yeah. So what I actually do here, I'll modify this a little bit. I have a navigation bar at the top. So a navigation page, right? So if I wrap this in a navigation page, and then I give my main page a title. All right, and then spin that up. It's probably going to look a little bit better. All right, so now we've got a header up the top there, and we can scroll that. Beautiful. All right, so what's next? What we in effect want to do, which is funny, we want to actually go and move that image as we scroll. And the way we're gonna move that image, is we're going to apply a transform to it. It's easier when you say it fast. Isn't that what they say? So what I've got here is I've got this preview open. The preview is all right. It's all right. It's not. It's a little bit buggy. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it'll probably, except in this case here, it's not going to show me my image here, unfortunately. What I was going to show you. Well, let me do this. Let me put a box view in here of red. All right. So I've got a box view sitting at the top here in my header. So what we'll effectively do is if we can detect the scrolling position of this, then we can start modifying its translation Y. So I could say like translation Y is 20, right? And see how that moves it down the page. Or if I say 100, oh, 100, right? It sort of moves it down the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to, as this scrolls up, we're going to start modifying its translation. That's kind of what we're hoping to do. Okay, cool. So let's start thinking about writing an effect then. So we'll get this out of the way here. All right. And in order to write an effect, what you have is you've got two parts to it. You've got the sort of shared part, and then you've got the platform specific part, because I'm not sure if you were here when I was talking about this. The idea is you have a renderer which connects to the native control. Okay, so this is not a renderer, an effect. All right, so our effect here, it's going to be down at the platform, and it's going to be able to connect to this control, and that's therefore we're going to be able to determine when the scroll value changes. Alrighty, so if we come back here, in order to create an effect, normally what you do is you create something called a routing effect. Okay, and your routing effect is going to live in your shared code, and its job is, to basically be the point where it can attach to the element. So, as an example here, I'll go and create a new class here, and we'll call this our. What this is doing is going to report the scroll position. So I'll call it the scroll reporter effect. Okay, and this is in my shared code, and it's going to be a routing effect. Okay, using Xamarin.Forms here. Now, a routing effect is going to call to a base, which is provided by this. So we have to have a constructor, because if we have a look at the squiggly line, it says there's no argument that corresponds to this to the constructor. So we'll create a constructor, and the constructor is just going to call down to the base. And when it calls to the base, it's going to give it the name of the effect. And effects are made up of two names. There's what's normally referred to as the group name or the company name, and then you have the effect name. So what should we call this? I don't know. Let's call this Xamarin, and then scroll reporter effect. All right, and that's what that's going to allow us to do is go ahead and create this class and then attach that to our control. All right, so there's our effect. Beautiful. But what we also need is we need the platform specific parts of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this. Let's do it let's pick a platform. Let's start with iOS. So I'm going to create normally I create effects under a folder called effects. And then I'll create myself a new class. And we're going to call this our scroll reporter effect. Okay. So the platform side of things is going to be a platform effect. Okay, using Xamarin.Forms, and we're also going to use Xamarin.Forms.platform.ios inside of there as well. Alrighty, so now that we have that, we need to, if we have a look at our squiggly lines here, it will say, I need to implement this. And there's two things on an effect. There's an on-attached and on-detached, and they're pretty much what you think they are in terms of when you attach an effect to a control. So in other words, when I go and create myself an effect here, and I say attach it to this, that's when we're going to get our on-attached. So let's implement these. All right. Now, of course, we don't want them to throw null exceptions. Okay. Now, there's a few different things that you can go and access here. You can access the element. The element is the Xamarin.Forms element. So if I attach this to a list view, the element would be the list view that I'm attaching to. We also have the control, which gives us a reference to the native control. Okay, so we have access to both of those parts. Now I'm going to write an effect here which is just limited to list view. So I'm going to say if our element is a list view equals false, right? Then I'm going to just return out of here. I don't want to. This is an effect that is specific to a list view. All right. And then what we would do here is we would, implement our effect somewhere down here. Okay. So the other thing that we need for an effect is we need to have a couple of attributes on here as well. So we have some assembly attributes. Actually, we're not going to do it there. We're going to do it on top of the namespace. And just referring back to our thing here, this is what's going to declare these two parts of the name, so that when we say attach this effect, it knows it's going to know where to find it. Let me turn that music down a little bit further. It's a little bit loud. Hi, EGNZ. How you doing? Great name. Welcome. We're just writing an effect to get the scroll position in Xamarin.Forms. So as I was saying, what we need here is we need an assembly level attribute, and we have a resolution group name. So this is the first part of the name. So I called the effect Xamarin Scroll Reporter Effect. So this would be Xamarin, the first part. Okay, so you obviously wouldn't use Xamarin, you'd actually use your company name or your library's name inside of there. Okay, the other attribute that we need inside of here is an export effect. Okay, and this takes two things. It takes the type of the effect and it gives it the name. So what we want to do is the type is this effect right here. Okay, so it's going to be the scroll reporter effect. Okay, now we need to resolve that. Okay, so I've called that same thing in a couple of different places. So normally how I like to do it is I'll have a using, right, which will be my platform effects, right, which is going to be parallax.ios.effects. So in other words, it's referring to this class. And what I can then do is I can say platform effects dot scroll reporter effect. The second attribute is going to be the name of it. Okay, so the name of it, I'm going to call it scroll reporter effect. What's going on here? What this wants is a type, right? So we actually need to go type of.
Here's your flash briefing. From Bolly, here's your word of the day.
Today's word of the day is gold brick.
My Alexa sometimes thinks I'm talking to her. All right, but I'm not. All right, so I'll go ahead and create this type of scroll reporter effect. That's cool. Now let's have a look and let's just run it and see if we can actually hook up to this thing. Okay, so back in our main code here, let's do this. On our on our appearing of our page. Okay, what we want to do is we want to basically go and get that effect, and then we want to attach it. So in order to do that, let's go and say attach our effect. So we'll say my list view scroll effect equals a new, and I can say scroll reporter effect. Right, so this is essentially creating an instance of this, which is then calling down to the base and creating one of these for us. So now what I can do is I can go and add that into my control. So if I have a look at what my list view is called, which is called my list view, I can say effects. I have a friend who does this. I wanted to see why he gets paid so much. I don't know why he gets paid so much, but I'm sure he has fun. Okay, so my list view effects, go and add in that list view scroll effect. Cool. All right, so that's added the effect in there, right? And we've just done it for iOS so far. And let's just test this out, right? So I'll put a breakpoint here, and then I'll put a breakpoint down on my iOS code when this thing attaches. I could totally be there. Well, oh, build errors. Apparently I'm not. There's another guy you want to check out if you're interested in this stuff, called James Montemagno. James Montemagno is an absolute legend. What have I done here? I don't want a semicolon there. James Montemagno's amazing. No worries, see you later. Let's go and run this. All right, so in my on appearing, so when my page is appearing, I go and create an effect. So this is going to create my base effect in here, and then I get that effect and I attach it to the list view. All right, so this back at our picture here, I create an effect and then I attach it. All right, and so at that point there, that's when my onAttached is going to get called, hopefully. Right, and so there we are, onAttached, and now I can see my element. My element inside of there is it a list view, and it's all good, so we have access to it. Yeah, so Luce works a lot with James, who's Mott's, James Montemagno. So yeah, definitely you want to follow him. Yeah, absolutely. Go and have a look at James's stream as well. He's just starting up a stream too. All right. Kinder Yale, export effects line. What's the export effects line? Is that the question? This line here is essentially how we hook up this name, Xamarin Scroll Reporter Effect, with this class. So you basically get those two names together, and when it finds those two names, yeah, cool. And then we're going to type, which calls down to there. Excellent. Fantastic. So yeah, the more, given that it's now 10:40 at night, the more pair programming we can do here, the better. All right. Good old Twitch delay. Yeah, hopefully it's not too much. Anyway, okay, cool. So we've got our effect and we've got our effect attached now. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to start actually doing something in our effect. We got this. Okay. So in this here, what we're going to do is, this is where we write some platform specific code. And this is where you got to work out how each platform is going to expose its different scroll events to you, which is just sort of like, you know, the native code that it would use. So some references here. I'm not going to just sort of invent this code as we go. People have already worked this stuff out. So here's a ListView scroll up and down events. And they've written a renderer for this. So you could do everything I'm doing in a renderer as well, but it means that you're custom writing a particular control. I want to write something where I can attach to any control. Okay, and so they've got some code in here, but let me just go and implement this for us. First of all, the way that we're going to hook into our scroll event in iOS is, first of all, we're going to get the actual native control. Right, so we'll say native control equals, and then we can say it's actually a UI table view. Yeah. So you want to start up a similar stream for Xamarin stuff? Yeah, fantastic. Well, follow me, and I'll follow you, and we can see when you're streaming. Okay, so I've got a native control here, so I can access that through the control. But the control that you get in effect is a generic sort of control. It's a UI view, but I know that it's a UI table view, and the way that I know it's a UI table view is there is some documentation. If I come here and have a look at custom renderers, and I look at the renderer base class, okay, and if I go down here and I have a look at a table view, we can see that a table view here in Xamarin.Forms maps to a UI table view in iOS, or a ListView in Android, or a ListView in UWP. All right, so let's smash this out. So now we've got the native control. So what I want to do with that native control is, in iOS, I want to go and add an observer to it. So I can say like native control. No, the UI table view in iOS is not going anywhere. That's sort of the native iOS control. I think it's going to stay around. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to say, let's get our native control, add an observer. So the list view you're talking about? Yeah, so the list view is going to get some, like, I think you'll find that the list view, well, they're actually implementing a new sort of grid view, which is going to be pretty cool. So they're going to extend it. So you can see it in the GitHub for Xamarin.Forms, what they're doing there. All right, so we're going to add an observer, and what we want to see, the property that we're interested in is content offset. Oh, the Xamarin.Forms table view. I'm not sure if they're getting rid of it. I don't use it a lot, to tell you the truth. Yeah. All right. So the sort of format for this, then we've got an NS key value observing options, and we want to say a new one, and then what we want to do is we want to basically handle the action on that. Okay, so we'll create a little method here, handle action. We'll see if it will create one of these for me. Oops. Yeah, that should do it. Okay, cool. So what we've done is we've added an observer. Now, the important thing is, if we add an observer, we want to get rid of the observer as well, right? So what does an add observer give us? It gives us an iDisposable. So we'll go and create a and this is our offset observer. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to get that. And then, very importantly, when we go and detach, let me just, obviously forgotten a bracket here. Oh no, yep, I have, I've forgotten a semicolon. When we detach, we want to get rid of that. That's pretty important, right? So we'll say our offset observer, we'll go and dispose of that, and we'll set it to null. All right, cool. So what we've done now is, on the native platform, we're now getting told about any content offset changes, which is effectively the scroll change. So let's let's see what we can get out of here. So once we have the native control, and what I might do is I might move this variable up here. I might create, let's call it a UI table view, and we'll say this is the native control, and then we'll say, there we go. So now we have the native control. So what I should be able to do is I should be able to say, let's go and have a look at content offset dot y. Right, so that should now tell us the content offset. So if I was to say, debug dot writeline dot or if we're cooler than that, let's be cooler than that. All right, something like that. So hopefully now what we should have is we've got an effect that we can attach, and as we scroll, it's going to call this action as the content offset changes. Let's see if it works. Let me just check I've connected this up. Yeah, it should be cool. Get rid of that breakpoint. Get rid of that breakpoint there. Let's see what we get. All right, fantastic. Right, so now what I have is an effect that we can attach to a list view, and on iOS, at least at the moment, it's going to tell us that scroll position. And what that's going to allow us to do is then modify the position of this. Yep. All right, cool. So let's actually do that, right? So here comes the next challenging bit. And this is why a lot of people use renderers, because what I now need to do is I now need to, when this changes, I need to notify back to my main page so it can start moving that element around. So the way that I'm probably going to do this is I'm going to create myself an event, right? So let's come back up to our scroll reporter event, effect rather, and let's create ourselves a event args. Well, we could just pass the number. It doesn't really matter. Scroll event args. Okay, and what we'll have is we'll have a constructor under this, and we'll say, let's go and get a double, and we'll call this our scroll Y position, and we'll have a little property here. Which is going to be a double. It's going to be called scroll Y, and we'll set that. All right, so that's our event arcs that we're gonna raise from here. Okay, so how are we going to raise this? We're going to come back into here. And when this happens, we want to then to raise that. All right. So in order to do that now, this is another little tricky bit here as well. Is we've actually got to get hold of the actual routing effect itself, right? Because we're down in the platform code. So the way that we can find the routing effect, right? And what I'll do for here is I'll say, create another using in here. I'll say this is routing effect. And that's just going to be under Parallax. And here we'll say find our effect. Right, so we're going to have a thing here, which is our routing effects dot scroll reporter effect. And in order to find this is a little bit challenging. What we need to do is we need to say, give that a variable name. It's hard to type at 11 o'clock at night. So we'll say our effect is equal to, right, from our element. Okay, so our element is our list view dot effects dot first or default, right? And what we're looking for in our first or default here is our scroll view effect. Hey, Gaming Wire Live. Thanks for the follow. Thank you very much. Are you doing Xamarin development? Hey, how you doing? So what do I want to do here? We want to say, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to find the first effect of type scroll reporter effect. That's what I'm actually trying to do. So what I could do is I could say the first one where E is a routing effects dot scroll reporter effect. And that's not going to do it for me. Why isn't that doing it for me? Cannot implicitly. Casarinus, thank you for the follow. Welcome. All right, what are we doing here? What we're doing is we're creating an effect for Xamarin.Forms, which is going to tell us the scroll view position of a list view because it's not exposed by Xamarin.Forms natively. Let me just get this quickly done, and then I can show you sort of what we're trying to do here. So I'm after routing effects. I've got to cast this. Routing effects. I can't spell. All right. Cool. So we got our effect. Okay. So this is what we're trying to do. So I've got myself in fact, I could probably just run this. I've got myself a list view, and it's got a header on here. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to trap or be told about that scrolling, exactly where the position is on this. But Xamarin.Forms doesn't tell us that. So I'm creating this thing called an effect, which is going to be attached to a list view, and it's going to report that value for me so that I can then start playing around with this image. All right. Cool. But, ask any questions you want in the chat window. Try and keep it a little bit interactive. Okay, cool. So what am I doing here? I've got my effect. What I want to do here is instead of just debug writing this out, I want to raise that event. So I can say like effect, which is my effect. What type is that? Okay. Oh, you know what I need? I've created an event args inside of here, but what I actually have to create here is an event. So this is going to be the event that gets raised. The image is in the list view header. Yeah, so this is what the list view looks like. It's a list view with a header that's got a grid and an image inside of it. Yep, so it's actually in the list view. All right, let's do this. Let's create ourselves an action here. And I don't know. We want to definitely get the scroll event args in here. And this is going to be our scroll changed event. Got a lot of compiler errors here. What am I doing? Okay. So now that I have that, let's save everything here. I should be able to say scroll changed. Something like that. Should be able to say scroll changed. Actually, no, I don't want that. God, when's the last time I actually wrote an event handler? Sorry, all right. So let's create something we can fire here. So we'll say this is on scroll effect. It's going to take a sender, and it's going to take a scroll event args, and what this will do is it will call that action. So we'll say scroll changed. If somebody's hooked up to that, let's go and invoke it, pass it the sender, and pass it the scroll event args. And so what will happen is our main page is going to go and subscribe, well, to this actually, and this is what's going to trigger it. So let's try this. So now I've got my scroll change. That's not what I want. I want on scroll effect. That's a bad name for it. Let's call this on scroll changed. So we'll say on scroll changed. So first of all, we've got the sender. So in our case, that's going to be our element. So our Xamarin.Forms ListView. And then we've got a scroll event args. And that's going to take our scroll position, which we know is this one here. We're going to throw this on a couple of lines. All right. And then I've got something broken here. All right, so now we have that event. Now I want to go and hook this thing up. So let's come back to our main page here. And we should be able to say something like this. We should be able to say ListView scroll effect dot scroll changed. When our scroll changes, we're going to get the sender, and we're going to get the scroll event args. And in our scroll event args, we're going to have the position, the scroll Y. Cool. All right, and just to test this out, make sure that our event is actually firing. Let's just change the title of this page equal to scroll value toString. Hello, Jeffrey. How you doing? I'm up late coding. So we're just writing an effect for the list view so we can get the scroll position. All right, that's good. That's right. So we can see this value at the top here, changing the title, which means from our effect, it's actually raising that event. We're listening to that event. So now comes the cool bit. Now you can play around with this and you can do things like change how that image transforms as we go across. Or you could have multiple images and you could do a proper sort of parallax effect. So let's try out something nice and simple here. Let's check out the name of our image, header image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say header image, and I'm going to want to transform this by a certain amount. So I'll say my translation y equals our scroll value divided by some parallax value, however much we want to parallax it by. All right, so let's create a parallax scale. 2.5 works pretty good. Jeffrey, thanks for the follow. You're a legend. Are you still streaming? All right, let's have a look. Maybe this will work. Let's comment that out for a second. So what this is doing is it's saying, I'm going to move this image down the page. So, you know, if I've got this here and I've got my image here, as this scrolls up, I'm going to scroll that down, which means it's going to appear like it's scrolling at a different rate to the actual list view. Hopefully. Let's try it. Hey, look at that. Is that scrolling at a different pace? That isn't scrolling at a different pace, is it? In fact, here's something interesting. Have a look at what's going on here. As I scroll that, what's actually happening is this image is coming over top of the list view. You see how it's 0 sort of disappears up behind it. All right, now here's a bug I found today. What I just saw is my simulator stopped. Yeah, I'll show you about 2 bugs I found today. Xamarin's all about tracking down the bugs. All right, so here's something you might want to try. If basically my simulator froze there, right? And it was not my emulator. This is actually my remote view of my iOS simulator. Let me show you the thing I found today. Because now if I try and run this again, it's going to say checking server, and it's just going to stop there. It's not going to get any further. All right, over on my Mac, here's my Mac, right? Have a look at this bad boy. Mono 64 at 199% CPU. That's bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill this process. And everything's going to be fixed. Hopefully. Waiting for device. There we go. So if you have that issue, go and find Mono 64 and kill it. And then it will restart itself. Okay, now back to where we were here. So the problem here is it's scrolling, but this is actually scrolling underneath there, right? And the reason for that is because we've got this grid that's here, right? But we're moving that image down, and it's actually coming outside of here, and it's overlapping with those. So the trick here, it's a property that a lot of people don't use very often. It's called isClipToBounds. And if we say true, that means that its children won't go outside of this. So hopefully that will fix our issue. All right, and there we are. We've actually got a monkey moving at a different speed to our list view now. See if we have a look there. It's sort of scrolling up at a slightly different pace. So it's kind of like a parallax effect, and what we could have is we could have, you know, multiple images inside of here moving at different speeds. Okay, by just adjusting this value back here. Like if I change that to 5, for example, might be a bit drastic. Change that to 4. Now the relationship between this and this is going to be different. Okay, so it's sort of, it's going to scroll a little bit slower, and you know, right down to, if I said 1, it's pretty much probably going to scroll at the same pace, right? And if I go less than 1, it's actually going to go in the wrong direction. In this case, it's going to stay still. All right, which is not what we want. So we pick a value of, like, you know, whatever works for you. I'm going to stick it at 2.5. Cool. So that's awesome. So now we've got a parallax effect working on iOS that we can just go and grab that effect. We can attach it to any list view we want without creating a renderer, and it's going to report the scroll change for us, which is pretty cool. And maybe not tonight, but maybe another time, I'll make this a little bit more interesting with perhaps a couple of different layers in here moving at different speeds, so as we get that parallax effect. All right, let me just finish this off by creating some effects on the different platforms. All right, so let's start off with, is there a concept of Z-index? There is, I suppose. That's why I actually, yeah, that's why I put it inside of a grid, right? Because what I could do is, you know, if in here I had an entry field, was there a follow? Ackendale, beautiful. Thanks for the follow. So if I said text hello monkey, and I said this is centered vertically and horizontal. Johnson McBig, hi. And we'll set its font color, text color, to white, and we'll set its font size to 20 or something like that. I look like a teacher. You mean I physically look like a teacher? Truth is, I work as a teacher, yes. I'm busted. All right, so if I put this entry in here, right, with Hello Monkey, just in terms of the Z order, right, these are both going to be within this grid, right? But this is going to have a, if you like, a higher Z order. So it's going to sit on top of that. Man, it's late. I created an entry, which is not what I wanted at all. What I wanted to do is I wanted to create a label. Crikeys. This is what I get for coding at 11:15 at night. Maybe a politician. Is it my massive headphones? I need some new headphones. These headphones are ridiculous. Look at them. Look how big these things are. All right. So the question is Z-index, right? So if this appears later in the in the order, in the grid, then it's going to be at a higher Z index. And we're not modifying this, so it should actually scroll at a different rate to what my monkey scrolls. See, so now those two are scrolling at different speeds. So that's kind of how you can do Z index. It doesn't actually have a Z index property, but effectively it does. All right, so there we go. All right, so now we've got our basic effect working. Now it's a case of doing it on each of the platforms, because if I was to run this on UWP, let's try UWP, everyone's favorite environment. Might get a big fat exception, or most likely what will happen is absolutely nothing, right? So as we scroll, it does nothing, right? So it's all just the normal sort of header. And the reason for that is because if we come back here and we have a look at this effect and we're running on UWP, we don't have a scroll reporter effect in UWP, right? Which means if I was to stop this again, run this bit of code, the effect that I have here is basically doing nothing, right? So it's not attached to anything, it's not resolved, right? So therefore it doesn't throw an exception, which is really nice. Instead, it just does nothing. All right, so let's make it do something. So in order to make it do something, we just need to implement the effect down here. And what I'm going to do, probably the easiest way, because effects all pretty much look the same on each of the different platforms. They just got different platform specific code. So I'll create myself an effects folder. And I'll create myself a class here, which is my scroll reporter effect. All right, and I'm actually just going to grab this code here pretty much. I'm going to grab these lines. I'll throw these up here. This, of course, is going to be UWP. I'm going to add a few namespaces in. And this is going to be a public class, platform effect. That's not what I'm after. Haters89, thanks for the follow. Yeah, that's right. We want Xamarin.Forms. Xamarin.Forms platform UWP. Cool. So now we have that. Now we need to implement our abstract class. So we get our onAttached, we get our onDetached. And now it's a question of implementing it the UWP way. All right, let's go back to our other effect here and see what we have. So first of all, we want to be able to find the effect again because we want to raise the event. So we'll create that there. We'll say I have this same code here. Okay, so this is only an effect that only applies to a list view, and we find our effect, and then what we have to do is we have to actually go and write some UWP code, which I'm really terrible at. There's a few implementations out there, but how it basically works is you get the scroll viewer. Right, so scroll viewer from XAML controls. All right, This is a Xamarin.Forms list view. All right. So we're going to find our scroll viewer. So the way that we'll do this is we'll say our scroll viewer equals, and we'll have a method, because this, I'm going to bring in a method here in a second. Get scroll viewer. Okay. And we're going to need to pass it in our list view. So our list view is going to be our native control. So that's going to be a windows.ui.xaml.controls.listView. And so in order to get that, we'll say native control equals our control, which is a generic framework element, as a Windows UI XAML controls. I'll get there eventually. List view. Beautiful. All right. So we're going to pass the native control into this. And what it's going to do is it's going to go and have a look around and eventually find its scroll view inside of there. And that's what we need to hook up to. Okay, so here's a bit of code that I've found around the place. Okay, so this is going to be our native control. And all it's doing is going through the visual tree, and it's looking for the scroll viewer. So let's do this. This actually doesn't want to be a list view. This needs to be a dependency object. All right, and using Windows Media. And eventually what this code's going to do is going to return the scroll viewer for this thing. Okay, so once we have the scroll viewer, that's how we can then hook up to its view changing. And from here, we now get told about its value in here. So inside of here, there's an e.nextView.vertical offset. So that's what we want. So we want to raise that as an event. So we have our effect up here. On scroll changed. Our sender, which is our element. Our scroll event args, which is going to be a new scroll event args. And that's our value. Cool. Font's probably a little bit big. All right, and that should be it. Nah, that's probably not going to be it, because when we attach this effect, we're hooking this bad boy up, but we're not unhooking it. So on detached, we want to stop that. And I reckon that should work. There we are. And we've got a parallax effect there. Beautiful. So there we are. That's UWP done. Next target. Let's go and have a look at Android. Android's going to be the messy one. Android's always the messy one. But let's get the basics set up here. Go and add our folder. Effects. Let's go and create ourselves a scroll reporter effect. Let's copy some code from, say, our iOS. And pretty much want some of these values here. Except this is going to be an Android effects. Sorry, Droid effects. Add in some musings. On attached, on detached. And let's follow the same pattern as well. So we'll say, yeah, we want that. Yep, we want that. Do we want that? Yeah, who knows? Okay, so it's going to be a Xamarin.Forms ListView. Effect. Let's copy a couple of those. That's our routing effect. All right. Now, here's where we turn to an interesting blog. All right. So this guy has a renderer. In case I didn't post this out before. This guy has a renderer for UW. We're not doing UWP, we're doing Android. It's actually not the one I'm after. I think this one. Google it. Hey Google. All right, there's like a million different posts on Stack Overflow about this. So here's one way to do it, because Android. Oh, good afternoon, Tigana Roa. How you doing? We're just building a parallax effect on the header of a ListView, but we're not doing it via a renderer. We're doing it via an effect, so that we can attach it to any ListView. All right, so there's some code here, which is going to kind of do it for us. But the problem with this code, because I had a look at this article before, the Android ListView doesn't give you the scroll position. And so the way this kind of works is it goes and gets the first element. Question there, what would be the difference between a renderer with a ListView as a base type and an effect? Yeah, okay. So what you'll find is you'll find a lot of people implement this as an effect, as a renderer, right? So they'll create their own ListView, and then they'll put in this code to do the scrolling stuff. So there's a few examples of that around. none of them do quite what I'm after, but the advantage of an effect is I can actually just have, like, because often you'll subclass a list view for your own reasons for all sorts of things, right? And that might be cool if you want to have scrolling stuff in it, but often I write little samples where I've got like a list view and I just want to augment it with some additional information. And so here, for example, I've just got like a normal list view here, right? Sitting inside of here. And then all I do is I say, go and create myself an effect, add that effect onto a list view or a derived list view if you've got one. And then just say, yeah, listen in for its scroll changed, and then go and give us our information. So the difference here is that I could attach it to different types of list views that I have. And I wouldn't have to bake it into all the renderers. If that kind of makes sense. But you could do exactly the same stuff with a renderer, which is probably what most people do. I just like the idea of being able to just go and slap it on any list view. All right. Does that make sense? Do you have any performance gains with it? No, I wouldn't say you'd get any performance gains. You probably get slightly better performance out of a renderer, really. But it's not going to be terrible performance. So, you know, the idea, of course, is, you know, we've got our Xamarin.Forms control here. Got our renderer, so you could, you know, for a list view, you could subclass that puppy and then put the code into the renderer, which creates the list view. What we're doing instead is we're creating an effect, which is going to tell us about the renderer, it's going to tell us about the text view, it's going to tell us about the element. And so we're just hooking into that, raising an event, which then our list view or our code can listen to. So it's kind of like like an attached property, kind of, really. All right. So let's talk about Android. Android's pretty crazy the way this works. I'm just trying to find a bit of code here that actually implements it. All right, here we are. I've got a bit of code here. Here's a bit of code that I'm going to just jam into my Android renderer, Android effect. All right, so this bit of code here. Okay, basically says, let's go and have a look at our control. Go and get the first visible child. And then what it does is it says, let's go and get its top location, because it might be only half scrolled onto the screen. And then what it has is this solution here. And I reckon there's a better way of doing this. I just don't know it. But this is sort of seems to be the way that Stack Overflow recommends. So you've got this, the whole idea here is you want to deal with the situation where your list view has different height rows. So what they do is they actually have this dictionary of elements and their heights. And so what they do is they basically come in here and they say, go and get the first element inside of here, go get its height, add it in there, and then it goes through the previous ones and finds those heights, and then adds them all up, and then returns that value. And it seems a little bit crazy to me, the way it works, but it seems to be the way people do it. Okay, so we're going to a cell height of 0 there. So now what we're going to do is we want to basically hook up to the scroll event. So we're going to have a method there. On attached, we want to get our native control, which is going to be for Android. It's going to be an Android .widget ListView. Let's check. So this is in the renderer guide. Yep, so it's a ListView on Android. Cool. So that's our native control. Cool. So our native control is going to be our control cast as an Android widget.ListView. And now we should be able to say native control, scroll, hook that bad boy up. That's going to tell us when it's scrolling. It's not going to tell us anything useful, mind you. Right, so first visible item, it knows about the total item count, but it's actually not telling you where it's scrolling to. And so that's the purpose of this method down here. So this method will say, get ListView Y position. And that we could actually just say that's equal to our native control, couldn't we? All right, so we get that, and then we raise that event. So we say our effect on scroll changed. Our sender is going to be our element. And we've got our Y pos, which is our pos. In our detach, we want to unsubscribe. Let's give that a go. I think this is going to return pixels, and that's going to be a problem for us. Let's wait for Android. Yeah, I know a bit about MVVM. It's my preferred way of developing apps. Yeah. In this case here, I'm just jamming out some code, but yeah, MVVM is a cool pattern. I really like it. So what I do plan on doing this stream, I'm just sort of testing out streams at the moment, but actually go and build up some proper applications with proper structure. At the moment, I'm just doing sort of little samples just to get used to Twitch. Is that your preferred approach? Iron 11555? 1155? What's this Android doing? Your Twitch bug. What does that mean? You have a Twitch bug? You've got homework about MVVM. Yeah, fantastic. Good pattern. All right, we got our monkey. Now, I reckon this is going to have some trouble. Yeah, that's not pretty. All right, so what's happening here is this has to do with the difference between pixels and device independent pixels, or DIPs, DPs in Android. So it's actually moving the item, but not by much. All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to get the density of the device. Because Xamarin.Forms deals with sort of DPs in terms of Android, or like effective pixels on UWP, or points in Android, on iOS. But I think this is reporting pixels, and so we need to work out the device density. Pixels and DPs. Yeah, pixels and DPs, exactly. Yeah. So we need to know the density. And we can work that out by doing something like this. We can say our density equals, let's do it after here so we can get hold of our native control. Dot context dot resources dot display metrics dot and then I think we have density inside of there. Density. Man, it's late at night. I spell it the same wrong way again. Density. Cool. And so now what I want to do is, instead of reporting that position, we'll say our pos equals our pos divided by our density. Can't. What do we have here? Well, this should probably be, what are we actually reporting out of here? An int. No, this wants to be a double. There we go. That'll do it. All right. This simulator feels a little bit laggy. Yeah, simulator's toast. I'm using the new Hyper-V simulators. Let's go and spin up a different one. Good thing is they're really fast to load. All right. Deploying, installing, all good. Incredibly fast. It actually is pretty cool. So these are the Hyper-V ones, just using the Android emulators, but I've got Hyper-V running on my machine. Yeah, and they work pretty well. I think this is just, Android emulators are tough. Often I use Visor and then just use my physical device. All right. Hey, there we go. We got parallax action on Android. All right, and if we sort of scroll down, scroll back up. Let's see if we still got it. Yeah, we go. Parallax. Yeah, you definitely want to look into it loose, or just use physical devices. There's a lot less troubles with physical devices. Yeah, it's actually pretty good, because all we're doing here is the actual. I don't know if you were hanging out before when we actually implemented this. This is the parallax code here. This is it, right? Everything else is just about reporting. Everything else is just about reporting this the scroll position, because the Xamarin.Forms ListView doesn't do it for you. You know, if we had a scroll view, that's a different story, right? Like a scroll view does it, right? So, if I had a scroll view, had a scroll view here, scroll view has a scroll Y property and a scrolled event. So it already gives it to you, but list views don't do it. Probably because it's tough to do. And there's a lot of boundary conditions. But yeah, all of that code with the effects was just to report this. And so once we have that, we just basically say, let's get that header image, this one here, and let's just move it down the page. So it's basically doing this. What's this called? Hello, emulator. You know, I should do a session. I should do a session on speeding up Android boot times. All right, so effectively, like, as I scroll this up, we're actually scrolling that monkey image down. We're translating it down so that it's basically working there. I'm Cant. Thank you for the follow. I'm just about finished, actually. So I think I've achieved what I wanted. I've got the parallax effect working on iOS and on Android and also on UWP. Let me just get the UWP one over here. Because everyone's developing for UWP, right? So there we go. We got it on there, and we got it over here, and we got it over here. Beautiful. So there you go. What I'll probably do is I'll probably publish this code onto GitHub. So one thing to have a look at on the stream is down the bottom of the stream, down there somewhere, there is my YouTube. So I'm going to upload all the videos to there. Hit the follow, Pepinhu. Thank you for the follow. So I plan on doing these, at least once a week. So if you've got any topics you want me to cover, or anything you want me to do, then hit me up on Twitter at kphilpotts, and we can cover those things off. Probably I got an email from somebody the other day saying, "Hey, how do I implement card views?" So if you, probably one of the next ones I do, what I actually want to do, it's almost 12 o'clock for me now, so I'm going to go to bed, but I'll actually do a proper parallax here, where, for example, I have like a one effect I've seen, which is really nice, is you have like a profile image that sits over here. And then as you scroll it up, it sort of moves up into this corner and everything sort of rearranges itself. So I'll probably challenge that, take that as a challenge and try that. Or, you know, something like, you know, the sort of pull to refresh as you pull it down and like rocket ships appear and stuff like that. Give that a go. Oh, coding with Loose. Thanks for the follow, Loose. Yeah, and then I'll probably tackle cards. And then I'll actually get onto what I really want to do in the stream, which is talk about connecting it up to like Azure Functions and cognitive services and things like that. Start developing a real app. So I'm going to call it a night. So yeah, that profile one, or fixing a button at the top as you scroll. Yeah. So yeah, I'll give that one a go. But yeah, follow Petridge. I reckon I know who that is. And when I get around to doing that, come and watch. Mezu80, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. All right, well, I'm gonna call it a night. So thanks for joining in. Shoot me any tweets if you got any questions, or you got any ideas for things to twitch about. And have a good night. I'm gonna go to bed because it's 12 o'clock. See you later.